Today we're going to review the highest priority targets in the open field. If you have the opportunity to choose between one commander to target or another, which should you choose first? And this makes a big deal in actually getting great trades. So stick around in this video for the targeting priorities that I would recommend. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today we're updating the list we made together over 6 months ago, talking about what are the highest priority targets in the open field. And at the time, well, there were quite a bit fewer commanders than there are now. Here are all the commanders that we actually need to add onto the list, starting with Margaret and Bobber and going all the way up to the brand new Liu Chat and Gorgo. But in addition, the meta has changed pretty darn substantially. So before I dive right into, hey, here's where I'd rank these new commanders, there's a couple things that I want to do in this video. First of all, I want to give you some general guidance for open field targeting. Then we'll go in and just sort of readjust what's already in this list, because there are definitely things that need to be moved around. Lastly, we'll add in these commanders right over here that have dropped into the game since I made this list. So let's just start with a very important open field concept, which is that you only generate rage toward your active skills if you are directly targeting something. So although target priority is really, really critical in elevating the speed with which you take down enemy marches, just making sure that you are hitting something at all is often better than hitting nothing, which is why I often play the game now in dot mode. In fact, I play the game so much more in dot mode now than I ever used to. My hope is that they'll add in some sort of overlay that at least shows you what you're hovering over and like what would you be targeting. And they've done that in Call of Dragons. So maybe when they do the big map update that's coming to the game, maybe they'll go in and do that. But for now, I just want to emphasize that hitting something is always better than hitting nothing. Well, unless the march kind of counterattacks you to death. But for the most part, hitting something's always better than nothing. And hitting the right thing can make a huge difference in whether or not you win or lose. So to review what's already here, for the most part, we've got in the top priority commanders, basically when we identify that a noob is in the open field. This signals that this player is so far from using the meta, you should just obliterate them. Alternatively, they may be using a garrison captain, and you should try to focus down garrison captains before they get into the garrison. So your top priority is commander primaries that are just obviously noob choices to an experienced player, and also commanders that might be going to serve as a garrison captain. From here, we've got the high priority marches, and there's honestly too many of these. You can't have this many high priority choices, honestly. Like, well, I want to reduce this list if I can. Then we've got medium priority, what you sort of look to hit after this. High priority, then low priority, which is things that you would hit, but only after this other stuff is dealt with. And the stuff that you ignore, just ignore it. I mean, these marches do so little in the open field, or you take so much damage when you try to deal with them, you're better off just letting area of effect damage handle those marches and whittle them down. And then after everything else is gone, you swing back and you deal with these. These marches are often, in fact, all of them, are really dependent on high counterattack damage and even mitigation when they're getting swarmed. So you want to ignore those for sure. So when we take a look at what's here, man, how times have changed. First of all, I would say these days, an Alexander the Great primary probably means that you're a noob. Like, there just aren't any times that I can think of where Alexander the Great, and by the way, this is only oriented towards KVK season, I suppose, 4 and beyond. Technically in KVK season 3, you'll gain access to the entire suite of commanders in the game. However, like, if you see an Alexander the Great in KVK season 2 as the primary, like, or I guess KVK season 3, that would be sort of expected. In KVK 2, it would definitely be expected that you see a lot of that. So it's only a noob alert situation in like that KVK 4 and beyond timeline. In addition, Amani is just not at all used as a primary now for archers. It's funny how that was like once a thing you would have really considered and been doing, and now it's like, why the hell would you do that? Also, I want to say Tariq ibn Ziyad, like, no one really uses him as a primary. I don't want to say it's a noob alert, top priority, But like, no one is doing this. So I'm actually going to put him here. Like, if someone's using him as the primary, they're either the rally lead and you might get wrecked, or they just don't know what they're doing. Because I can't think of a situation where you want to use him as the primary. Also, Joan, I just want to bump her down to a high priority. Like, I don't think she's higher priority really than any of these other ones, but I'll move her to the left. She's kind of squishy. She is kind of squishy, but I think her support tree kind of helps her deal with that. And then Gilgamesh is such a weird one. This dude is borderline noob alert. However, let's just jump back in game and let me show you why Gilgamesh has this weird new potential relevance in the game. So the reason people are talking about Gilgamesh again is his relevance against Gorgo, Liu Che, and the potential smite meta that may be incoming, because troops led by this commander take 15% less normal attack damage. Okay, this is a big deal. 15% less damage from normal attacks. It is believed that this also is reducing smite damage taken. So this could be a counter to smite damage. I would have thrown him in noob alert, but for now we'll leave him in high priority. So if we make our way back here, I'm kind of going to bump him to the left, Boudica to the right. And gosh, like, do we even really see Saladin anymore in the open field? I want to put it as a noob alert commander. We don't really see Ramses primary anymore. Like, that's a noob alert commander. There's a lot of commanders that just bump into this noob alert status. Cyrus now is a noob alert commander. Like, you would focus that down, and it's really squishy, so that seems super reasonable. Artemisia is now a noob alert commander. Like, you shouldn't see these commanders as the primary in the open field. Others you will see, and like, I get it. Like Bert, you're probably not looking at a noob there. They probably know what they're doing, and they probably maxed it because they were a rally lead, and they may or may not have been too happy with the time frame in which they actually got to use it as a meta rally. But the point that I'm trying to make is that, like, Bert is still pretty good. Someone who uses Chandra, though, is that noob alert? I don't know if I'd say it's noob alert per se, but you wouldn't expect to see it. You got a lot of other cavalry, but I think it's not necessarily a noob. We'll leave it as low priority for now. So from here, now we can actually bring in some of the new commanders, okay? And this is kind of a weird one. I want to start with Margaret and Bobber. What do we do with Margaret and Bobber? If you see them and you have the opportunity to hit the siege tower, I feel like that's what you want to do. Like, that is a high priority target. That tower is powerful when it's not being directly targeted, I feel. When it can just sit there and wreck you from afar, that's an issue. And if you're right on top of the tower, I think you should take it out. I don't have a lot of experience with this because I haven't really bumped into anyone who uses it. But that would be my guess as to where that goes. And compared to all the other things that are up there now, man, I feel like I need to bump Boudica Prime down. She's going to drop down to a medium priority compared to these squishier, high priority targets. Now, from a garrison standpoint, I think that for obvious reasons, you see a Hera in the field, you need to get rid of it if it's trying to become a garrison captain. Same is true for Dido. You see her in the field, you probably want to get rid of that. If she's trying to be a garrison captain, you won't see them in the field unless they are going to be a captain or they're a noob. So I think that's a pretty fair assessment. And then from a gold key standpoint, I don't think anyone's doing this yet, but Pyrrhus, I just want to put into the ignore category. The reason I want to put him in the ignore category is he just does a bunch of normal attack damage boosts. So he loses a lot of his benefit if you're not directly targeting him, because normal attack also elevates your counterattack damage dealt. So you kind of ignore him, let your AoE do the work, and then I think you're good to go. It might be a noob, but I would say probably just ignore for now. I don't know many people that are using him, though, and I suspect this is more a thing that we'll see in much younger kingdoms over time as they sort of ascend into late KVKs, but worked on some early commanders. He might be one of the ones that people worked on because he's relatively new to the game. Now, this brings us to some far more important commanders. This brings us to Huo, who is a medium priority, does great damage, but is pretty tanky. And then Zhuge Liang, who is really tanky, but also does crazy damage and a crazy debuff. And I think he needs to be a very high priority target for elimination. From here, now we've got Justinian. I don't know. I would rate him similar to all the other commanders that are in medium priority. It might signal you're up against a pretty tough opponent. They might be a rally lead. So I'm even tempted to bump it down to low priority. Just because like they're likely to have a lot of really good gear, not be a great target. Whereas, you know, like everybody should be running around with Skippy Prime or Nevsky or Boudica Prime in an ideal world, right? But we'll leave it here for now in the medium priority. So from here, now we add the new commanders. Liu Che. Ooh. I don't think he's particularly squishy. So I think he also goes into medium priority. So you kind of see here, medium priority is filled with meta commanders that are also good in the field. Whereas high priority is borderline off meta or already off meta for the most part. And they're squishy. So you want to take them down right away. And I assure you, taking down the squishy commanders ends the fight so much faster than trying to target like a Trajan. The final commander we need to move around here is Gorgo. And because she may actually be the garrison captain, I am actually inclined to bump her up to a high priority. Maybe they're just running around with her as the primary in the field. Maybe it's actually the garrison captain. I think you have to assume it's the garrison captain for a flag, and you see it, you want to lower its health as much as you can before it actually gets into the garrison. So let's just review who is in the high priority and why they are there. First up, we've got Nebu. And you'd think that with 30% defense, like, he'd be kind of tanky, but he is not. He is just so damn squishy. And Nebu with Zhuge Liang does so much damage, you have to deal with it if you see it. And technically, you'd see Zhuge Liang as the primary, which is a part of the reason he is also here. He does so much damage. He does such a big debuff. You have to get rid of him if you see him. Now, technically, the best thing to eliminate is actually the XY, so I'll bump that to the left. XY is a glass cannon, and there's no room for that anymore in most meta murder balls. Similarly, Guan Yu has just got no defensive stats, so get rid of it. You want to eliminate it, it will drop quickly. People don't really use the secondary that made that a bad choice anymore. People used to use Guan Liao, and that actually was a bad choice to target because that Liao will make Guan live forever. But these days, you're not really going to see a Liao anymore. I think his window of being super relevant has unfortunately come to an end. Which then brings us to Gilgamesh, who borderline is just like in the noob alert category. So I feel good about that. So that covers your high priority targets. Okay. And I feel very good about those choices being here. Now, the last time I made this video, I removed everything that was not meta or meta adjacent. And it made it a lot easier to kind of understand what I'm actually saying with this list. So if we remove everything from here that isn't actually meta right now and isn't really meta adjacent, there's a lot of commanders that drop off of this list, and it becomes suddenly much easier to see, like, hey, what the heck is Chisgule actually recommending here? And so what I'm really recommending is that if you see XY Nebu, Guan, or Zhuge Liang, that's probably what you need to focus. From there, I think the next best thing is the Joan Prime. And I see why before I had her in the high priority, because she is pretty squishy, but you probably won't see that in KVK. Joan Prime is used as the primary almost exclusively in Ark of Osiris, and Nevsky is now used as the primary in the Nevsky-Joan combo for KVK. So that's sort of how that's done. And then these medium priorities, I would rate roughly equivalently. It's possible we could bump a few of them down, but like Boudica Prime is likely protecting Zhuge Liang as the secondary. So yeah, you want to deal with that. I've even seen that run the other way around, Zhuge Liang primary, just to get that debuff going sooner, which is super reasonable. If you see Liu Che or Sargon on the field, like, of course you want to get rid of them, but they're pretty tanky. And like Nevsky only gets more tanky when you target him. He gains health, which kind of sucks. So you might bump him over here because he's got a triggered health boost. And then Henry is also really tanky. So, like, yeah, you want to get rid of it because it might be Isong behind there. It might be Zhuge Liang. It's got to go. And it is important to get rid of, but it might be tanky. So this row of medium priority really is kind of that blend of how tanky are they and how important are they to get rid of. And then Trajan remains the low priority. Why? Because you actually will do better if you focus everything else other than the Trajan. The biggest mistake you can make is actually targeting the Trajan, which is weird. You'd think that because he increases the damage he takes on his active skill, and because he's got, you know, like stacking defense the longer he's in the fight, you think you want to get rid of him early. Not the case. He is so tanky relative to the other marches that are here, and his effect and damage on the field kind of isn't changed, whether he's got 1,000 troops left or 450,000 troops left. He's buffing folks, and he has just such a small amount of damage factor that he's still doing the same thing as you're dropping his health, whereas each of these other commanders, you're dramatically changing their ability to do DPS as you start to lower their health. The other thing I'll mention about Trajan is you can sort of eliminate his relevance by killing all the marches he would have been buffing anyways. So target the marches he would have been buffing, and I think that you'll be better off. So I think this gives a pretty good sense of who to target first. However, I'm open to the idea that maybe I got something wrong here. So let me know down below in the comments what you think might be a better choice for the high priority category, or if you think one of these high priority marches, actually, you know what? It shouldn't be as high priority. To me, this feels like the right thing to recommend. You see XY, you see Nebu, you see Guan, you see Zhuge Liang, and you will see those all the time. Get rid of them. Great choice. Now, if you're looking for guidance on which commanders are good to invest in right now, which was a huge amount of input into this list, and why we just carved off all these marches as saying like, hey, like it's probably not what you're going to see. It's because people are investing in these commanders. Check out the card in the end screen, and that'll give you all the info you need on the best investments in Rise of Kingdoms.